The great hall stretched out like a sea of marble and light. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked slowly down the center aisle, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Around her, thousands of alien beings sat in curved rows that rose up to the ceiling. Each one represented a different species from across the galaxy. Their eyes, tentacles, sensor organs, and other strange body parts all focused on her. Elena had been to many important meetings before, but nothing like this. The Galactic Confederation had never put an entire species on trial. Until today. She reached the center of the hall and stopped at a small platform. Above her, 3 massive screens showed the faces of the Confederation's rulers. The first was an Etherian, its body made of pure energy that shifted between blue and silver. The second was a computational collective unit, with metal skin and glowing circuits for eyes. The third was a shepherd of Andromeda, so ancient that its true form was hidden inside a flowing robe of stars. The trial of species 7249, designation human, will now begin, announced the Etherian in a voice like wind chimes. This species stands accused of developmental barbarism and posing an existential threat to galactic peace. Elena straightened her shoulders. She had known this day would come, but she had hoped for more time. More time to show that humans could change, could be better. The first witness was a Zenthari general, his purple skin gleaming under the hall's lights. His forearms moved as he spoke, pointing at holographic images that appeared in the air. "Look at their history," he said, his voice full of disgust. "War after war on their home planet. They poisoned their own air and water. They created weapons that could destroy entire cities. Even now, in space, they cause trouble wherever they go." The images showed Earth's darkest moments. Ancient battles with swords and shields, world wars with tanks and bombs, nuclear explosions that turned cities into ash. Elena watched her species' worst moments play out for the entire galaxy to see. On Kepler 442b, human colonists refused our lawful mining claims. The Zenthari continued. When we came to collect what was rightfully ours, they attacked our ships. 3 of our vessels were destroyed. Dozens of my people died. This is what humans do. They take what is not theirs and fight when others try to stop them. Elena knew the real story was different. The humans on Kepler 442b had been there for 20 years. They had built farms and homes. The Zenthari had arrived with warships and demanded that the humans leave immediately, offering no payment or new homes. When the colonists asked for time to relocate their families, the Zenthari had opened fire first. But Elena also knew that her version of events would not matter today. The decision had already been made. The next witness was a crystalline sage, its body made of living gemstone that sparkled as it spoke. "Humans are unpredictable," it said in a voice like breaking glass. "Their emotions change quickly. They make decisions based on feelings instead of logic. This makes them dangerous to stable civilizations. We have seen what happens when emotional species are allowed to grow powerful. They bring chaos." More witnesses followed. Each one told stories of human aggression, human stubbornness, human refusal to follow galactic law. Some of the stories were true. Some were exaggerated. Some were complete lies. It did not matter. Finally, Elena was allowed to speak. She walked to the center of the platform and looked up at the 3 rulers. "Honored leaders," she began, "we do not deny our past. Humans have made mistakes. We have fought wars and caused damage. But we have also learned from these mistakes. We have ended slavery on our world. We have stopped most wars. We are working to heal the damage we did to our planet." She gestured to the screens around the hall. "Show them our hospitals where we save lives without asking for payment. Show them our rescue ships that help any species in danger. Show them our scientists working to cure diseases that affect many different alien races." But the screens remained dark. The Confederation did not want to see humanity's good deeds. Elena continued anyway. "We are young compared to most species here. We have only been in space for a few hundred years. Give us time to grow. Give us a chance to prove we can be peaceful." The Etherian ruler's energy form shifted to a dark red. "Time is exactly what we cannot give," it said. "Our analysis shows that humans will become more dangerous as they grow stronger. Your species learns too quickly, adapts too fast. In 1,000 years, you could challenge the stability of the entire galaxy. The decision has been made," announced the computational collective unit. Its voice was flat and emotionless like a machine. "Species 7249 is declared a galactic hazard. All human colonies will be evacuated. All human technology will be confiscated. All humans will be relocated beyond the outer rim, in the territories past civilized space. Elena felt her heart sink. The outer rim was a death sentence. It was where failed species went to die slowly among dead stars and empty planets. No one who went there ever came back. "You cannot do this," she said, her voice rising. "We have done nothing to deserve this. Millions of innocent people will suffer." The ancient shepherd of Andromeda finally spoke. Its voice was so old it seemed to come from the beginning of time itself. "The decision is final. Your species has 72 hours to begin evacuation. Any humans found in Confederation space after that time will be arrested." Elena looked around the vast hall. Thousands of alien faces stared back at her. Some showed pity. Most showed nothing at all. A few even looked pleased. She took a deep breath and made one last statement. "You judge us by our worst moments and ignore our best ones. You fear what we might become instead of seeing what we are trying to be. But I want you to remember something." Her voice grew stronger, carrying clearly through the hall. "You have never seen what humans become when we have nothing left to lose. You have never seen what we can do when we are truly free from your rules and restrictions." The Etherian ruler's form flickered with annoyance. "Empty threats will not change our decision." Elena smiled, but there was no humor in it. "It is not a threat. It is a promise. You think you are sending us away to die, but you are sending us away to become something new. Something you have never seen before." She turned and walked back down the long aisle. Behind her, the alien representatives began to talk among themselves, their various languages creating a noise like a storm. Most were already forgetting about the humans, already moving on to other business. Elena reached the great doors and turned back once. "We will remember this day," she called out. "And someday you will remember it too." Then she was gone, leaving the Confederation to their victory celebration. They had solved the human problem, they believed. They had protected galactic peace. In the following days, human colonies across the galaxy received their evacuation orders. Families packed what they could carry. Ships were loaded with 200 million people and whatever supplies the Confederation allowed them to take. Their homes were left behind. Their achievements were erased from official records. The last transport ship lifted off from New Geneva Colony as Confederation forces arrived to claim the empty buildings. As it disappeared into hyperspace, heading for the dark regions beyond the galactic edge, the local Confederation commander sent a report back to his superiors. "Human evacuation complete," he wrote. "Problem solved. They will not trouble us again." He was wrong about that, but it would be a very long time before anyone realized just how wrong he was. Captain Marcus Chen floated in the command chair of the salvage vessel Defiance, watching his crew work on the massive alien wreck in front of them. 50 years had passed since the exile, and the forgotten sectors had become home to millions of humans who had learned to live where no other species could survive. "Boss, you need to see this," called out Jenny Martinez from her position at the scanner station. She was one of the Void-born, the generation of humans who had grown up entirely in space. They were different from the Earth-born in ways that surprised everyone. Taller, thinner, with better reflexes and an almost supernatural ability to work in zero gravity. Marcus pushed himself over to her station. Outside the ship's main window, the wreck of an ancient vessel stretched for kilometers. It was clearly alien, but not from any species the humans had encountered before. The metal was a strange blue-green color that seemed to shift in the light from distant stars. "The scans show something weird inside," Jenny continued. "There are chambers that still have atmosphere, and some kind of power source that is still working after who knows how many years." Marcus nodded. This was exactly the kind of discovery that had allowed humanity to not just survive in the forgotten sectors, but to thrive. While the Confederation saw only worthless space junk and dangerous debris fields, humans saw opportunity everywhere they looked. "Get a boarding team ready," Marcus ordered. "Full environmental suits and heavy cutting tools. If that power source is still running, we might be able to reverse engineer it." Dr. Sarah Kim was already suiting up in the cargo bay when Marcus arrived. She had been one of the leading scientists in human space before the exile, working on faster-than-light communication systems. Now she was something entirely new, a xenoarchaeologist who specialized in studying dead alien civilizations and figuring out how their technology worked. "This is the 4th extinct species we have found evidence of in the past year," Sarah said as she checked her equipment. "All of them seem to have been more advanced than anything in current Confederation space. It makes you wonder what really happened to them. Marcus had wondered about that too. The official Confederation history said that these species had died out naturally, victims of disease or war or environmental collapse. But the more wrecks they explored, the more suspicious he became. Too many of the ships they found showed signs of weapons damage. Too many of the colonies they discovered had been abandoned suddenly, as if the inhabitants had been forced to leave in a hurry. The boarding team made their way through the ancient ship's corridors, following power cables that still glowed with a soft blue light. The ship had clearly been built for creatures much larger than humans, with ceilings that stretched high above their heads and doorways wide enough to drive a truck through. They found the main power chamber deep in the ship's core. In the center of the room stood a device unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. It looked like a crystal tree, its branches reaching out in all directions, each one pulsing with energy that seemed to flow like liquid light. "My God," Sarah whispered over the comm system. "This is incredible. The energy output readings are off the charts, but there is no fuel source I can detect. It is like it is pulling power directly from space itself." Marcus smiled inside his helmet. This was what humans had become expert at, taking the impossible inventions of dead alien species and figuring out how to make them work. The Confederation had strict rules about which technologies could be developed and which were too dangerous to pursue. Humans in the forgotten sectors had no such restrictions. "Can we move it?" Marcus asked. "Not the whole thing," Sarah replied, "but I think I can remove some of the smaller components. If we can figure out how they work, we might be able to build our own version." While Sarah worked on the power device, the rest of the team explored the ship. They found storage areas filled with materials that did not exist in Confederation space. They discovered computer systems with data storage capacities thousands of times greater than anything humans had built before. They uncovered weapon designs that used principles of physics that Earth scientists were only beginning to understand. It was exactly this kind of discovery that had transformed human civilization in the 50 years since exile. Every alien wreck was a treasure trove of advanced technology. Every abandoned colony provided new insights into how to survive in the harshest environments. Every piece of alien equipment taught humans something new about what was possible. Back on the human settlement of New Haven, built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, Admiral James Okafor reviewed the latest reports from exploration teams across the forgotten sectors. As the military leader of the exiled humans, he had spent decades turning a scattered group of refugees into something the galaxy had never seen before. Every human in the forgotten sectors knew how to fight. Not just soldiers, but doctors, engineers, farmers, and teachers. They had learned that in a region where pirates and raiders were common, everyone needed to be able to defend themselves and their neighbors. Every human also knew how to fix things. When you lived on the edge of space with no outside support, you learned to repair everything yourself or you died. Human children learned to rebuild starship engines before they learned to read, and every human knew how to adapt. The forgotten sectors were full of hazards that would kill most species. Radiation storms that could cook a person in seconds, gravity fields that changed without warning, temperatures that swung from freezing to burning in a matter of hours. Humans had learned to live and work in all of these conditions. "Sir, we have another report from the Border Patrol," said Lieutenant Commander Torres, handing Okafor a data pad. "Another Confederation probe ship has gone missing in Sector 7. That makes 6 this year." Okafor nodded. The Confederation occasionally sent ships to check on the exile zone, probably expecting to find nothing but human corpses and empty ships. Instead, their probe vessels kept disappearing. The few that made it back reported only empty space and natural hazards. The Confederation did not know that human technology had advanced to the point where they could hide entire fleets from the best sensors in the galaxy. They did not know that human ships could move through space without leaving any trace of their passage. They did not know that the refugees they had sent away to die had become something entirely new. "What should we do about the probe ships?" Torres asked. "The same thing we always do," Okafor replied. "Make sure they do not see anything we do not want them to see. And make sure they do not make it home with accurate information about our capabilities." The truth was that humanity was growing stronger every year, not just in technology but in numbers. The harsh conditions of the forgotten sectors meant that only the strongest and smartest humans survived to have children. Those children grew up harder and more capable than any previous generation of humans. They also grew up angry. Every human in the forgotten sectors had lost something in the exile. Homes, careers, friends, family members who had died during the long journey to the edge of space. They remembered who was responsible for their suffering. But more than anger, they grew up with something else. Hope. Hope that someday they would be strong enough to return to civilized space. Hope that they could build something better than what they had lost. Hope that they could prove the Confederation wrong about humanity's potential. In the research laboratories built into the shell of a dead planet, human scientists worked with alien technologies that broke every known law of physics. They were developing new types of faster-than-light travel that could move ships across the galaxy in days instead of months. They were creating weapons that could disable enemy vessels without killing their crews. They were building ships that could repair themselves and manufacture new equipment from raw materials found in space. None of this was possible according to Confederation science. But humans had learned that the Confederation's understanding of the universe was limited by their own fears and prejudices. The three ruling species had decided long ago that certain technologies were too dangerous to develop. They had created laws that prevented their member species from even researching these areas. Humans had no such restrictions. In the forgotten sectors, the only law was survival. If a technology could help humans live another day, they would master it. As Captain Chen's salvage team returned to the Defiance with their latest discoveries, he received a priority message from Admiral Okafor. The content was simple but significant. Preparation phase complete. Begin advanced development phase. Time to show them what exile has taught us. Marcus smiled as he read the message. 50 years of hiding in the dark spaces between stars was about to end. 50 years of being treated as galactic outcasts was about to be repaid. The Confederation thought they had solved their human problem by sending them away to die. They had no idea that they had actually created something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. They had created humans with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Commander Zara Thompson checked her ship's stealth systems one more time as she approached the edge of Confederation space. It had been 75 years since humanity was exiled to the forgotten sectors, and this was the first time any human had dared to return to civilized space in decades. Her ship, the Shadow Walker, looked nothing like the human vessels that had been forced into exile all those years ago. Built using technologies recovered from 8 different extinct species, it could bend light around itself to become invisible. It could mask its energy signature to appear as nothing more than cosmic dust. It could move through space without creating any of the disturbances that normal ships left behind. Zara herself was void-born, part of the generation that had grown up entirely in the forgotten sectors. She was taller and thinner than the Earth-born humans, with reflexes sharpened by a lifetime in zero gravity, and eyes adapted to see clearly in the dim light of distant stars. More importantly, she had been trained since childhood in the art of moving unseen through hostile territory. Her mission was simple: gather intelligence on how the galaxy had changed since humanity's exile. Admiral Okafor needed to know what they would be facing when the time came to reveal themselves to the Confederation again. What Zara discovered during her 3-month reconnaissance mission shocked her. The galaxy had become a much darker place than the one her people had been forced to leave. The Confederation that had claimed moral authority when they exiled humanity had become exactly what they had accused humans of being: aggressive, oppressive, and driven by greed rather than justice. At the Kepler Station trading post, Zara watched Confederation tax collectors demand payments that would bankrupt the local merchants. When a young Alkari trader protested that the taxes were too high, the collectors simply seized his entire cargo shipment and threw him in prison for resisting lawful authority. On the mining world of Xerion Prime, she observed thousands of Deltan workers laboring in conditions that would have been considered slavery on Earth. They worked 18-hour days in poisonous atmosphere, with no protective equipment and barely enough food to stay alive. When she asked a local overseer about the conditions, he laughed and said, "They should be grateful we let them work at all. The Confederation could have declared them incompetent like we did with the Viridians." Zara had never heard of the Viridians. When she searched the official records, she found only a brief note saying they had been relocated for their own safety 15 years earlier. No mention of where they had been relocated to or why. The more she investigated, the more disturbing the pattern became. Species that asked too many questions about Confederation Policies tended to have accidents. Colonies that discovered valuable resources found themselves forced to share those resources with Confederation-approved corporations. Worlds that tried to develop advanced technologies had their research confiscated for safety reasons, but Zara also discovered something else during her reconnaissance. Rumors of mysterious benefactors who helped oppressed species when the Confederation became too harsh. In a tavern on the border, world of Epsilon Reticuli, she overheard two Jaxari refugees talking in whispers about their escape from a Confederation punishment fleet. They spoke of ships that appeared from nowhere, with hulls black as space and no identifying marks. The mysterious vessels had disabled the Confederation ships without firing a shot, then helped evacuate the entire Jaxari colony to safety. They called themselves the Void Guard, one of the refugees said they were protectors of the forgotten. When we asked who they were, they just said we would understand someday. On the industrial world of Gamma Centauri, Zara found evidence of a different kind of intervention. A massive slave labor operation had been shut down overnight, with all the workers freed and the overseers found unconscious but unharmed. Security cameras showed nothing but electronic static during the hours when the liberation took place. Local Confederation officials claimed the incident was the result of an equipment malfunction and worker rebellion, but Zara spoke to some of the freed workers in private. They told a different story. We heard voices in the darkness, an elderly Zephyrian told her, speaking in a language we had never heard before, but somehow we understood what they meant. They said help was coming and we should be ready to run when the lights went out. What language was it? Zara asked. Strange words, the Zephyrian replied. Something about semper fidelis and never leave a man behind. I do not know what those words mean, but they sounded like promises. Zara knew exactly what those words meant. They were old human military phrases from the time before humanity had reached the stars. Semper fidelis meant always faithful. Never leave a man behind was a promise that soldiers made to each other. Humanity had not forgotten their exiled brothers and sisters in the wider galaxy. Somehow human forces were already operating in Confederation space, protecting those who could not protect themselves. The realization sent a chill down Zara's spine. If humans were already active in the galaxy without the Confederation knowing about it, then her people's capabilities had grown far beyond what anyone had imagined. She decided to test her theory by visiting one of the most oppressive worlds in Confederation space, Sigma Draconis 7th, where the Trilaxian species had been reduced to virtual slavery after their government had protested new Confederation mining regulations. What she found there confirmed her suspicions and terrified the Confederation. Officials, she observed, Zara arrived at Sigma Draconis 7 just as a Confederation inspection fleet was demanding that the Trilaxians increase their mineral production quotas by 300%. The local Trilaxian leaders explained that such an increase was impossible without working their people to death. But the Confederation commander dismissed their concerns. If your species cannot meet the demands of galactic civilization, perhaps you need to be relocated to somewhere more suitable for your limited capabilities, the commander said. It was the same threat that had been used against humanity decades earlier. That night, Zara monitored Confederation communications and watched as something impossible happened. Every ship in the inspection fleet reported simultaneous system failures. Their weapons went offline, their engines stopped working, and their communication systems began broadcasting the same message in Trilaxian. Your protectors are watching. Do not give up hope. By morning, the inspection fleet was gone. The Confederation commander filed a report claiming that his vessels had been hit by a solar storm, but Zara had monitored the local star's activity. There had been no solar storm. More disturbing for the Confederation was what happened next. Over the following weeks, similar incidents began occurring across the galaxy. Oppressive governors found their palaces surrounded by invisible forces that disabled all their security systems. Tax collectors discovered that their ships' computers had been reprogrammed to transfer collected funds to refugee assistance programs. Slave labor camps experienced mysterious equipment failures that freed their workers and left their guards unconscious. Confederation intelligence services launched massive investigations, but their agents kept disappearing. Those who returned spoke of encounters with shadows that moved like living darkness, of voices that spoke in ancient human languages, of technology that seemed to operate by rules that physics said were impossible. The three ruling species of the Confederation began to hold emergency meetings. The Etherians reported that their psychic powers could not detect the minds behind these mysterious interventions. The computational collective found their analysis programs crashing whenever they tried to model the technology being used. The shepherds of Andromeda claimed that their ancient memories contained no record of such capabilities. But Zara knew exactly who was responsible. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, humanity had become something that the galaxy had never seen before. They had taken the technologies of extinct civilizations and combined them in ways their original creators had never imagined. They had learned to move through space like ghosts, to strike without warning and to disappear without a trace. More importantly, they had not forgotten the values that made them human. Even after 75 years of exile and hardship, they still believed in protecting those who could not protect themselves. They still believed that freedom was worth fighting for. As Zara prepared to return to the Forgotten Sectors with her intelligence report, she intercepted one final Confederation communication that made everything clear. It was a secret message from the Etherian High Council to their intelligence operatives, and its contents sent shockwaves through the highest levels of Confederation. Leadership. Investigation confirmed. The mysterious intervention showed technological signatures consistent with species 7249. Probability. Analysis suggests 73% chance that humans survived exile and have developed advanced capabilities. Recommend immediate mobilization of Grand Fleet to investigate Forgotten Sectors. If humans have returned, they represent existential threat to Confederation stability. Zara smiled as she read the message. After 75 years of being dismissed as extinct or irrelevant, humanity was finally being taken seriously again. The Confederation was beginning to realize that exiling humans had not solved their problem. It had made the problem. Admiral Thextar of the 4th Confederation Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Glory, watching the empty space ahead of his formation. His fleet consisted of 300 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, carrying 50,000 troops to suppress another rebellion in the outer colonies. The rebellions were becoming more frequent lately, and more organized. Entire systems were declaring independence from the Confederation, claiming they could no longer tolerate the crushing taxes and oppressive regulations. It was becoming a serious threat to galactic stability. As an Etherian, Thextar could sense the emotions of his crew. Most were confident and eager for battle. They had never lost a major engagement, and 300 ships should be more than enough to crush any rebellion. But Thextar felt something else beneath their confidence, a growing unease that none of them could quite explain. "Admiral, we are detecting an anomaly in Sector 7, reported his sensor operator, a young computational collective unit whose circuits glowed blue with concentration. "Single vessel, unknown configuration, directly in our path." Thextar extended his energy form to look at the main display. A single ship hung in the void ahead of them, barely visible against the background of stars. It was sleek and dark, unlike any design in the Confederation database. "One ship?" Thextar's energy form shifted to an amused yellow. "Perhaps they want to surrender before we reach the colonies. Open a communication channel." The response that came back made every being on the bridge freeze in shock. "This is Admiral Rebecca Santos of the 1st Human Imperial Fleet." The voice was clear and strong, speaking perfect galactic standard with an accent that Thextar recognized from historical records. "You are trespassing in territorial space of the Terran Empire. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." For a moment the bridge was completely silent. Then Thextar's energy form shifted to a bright red of anger and disbelief. "Impossible," he said. "Humans were exiled a century ago. They died in the Forgotten Sectors." "This is your final warning," the human voice continued calmly. "Turn around and leave this system now." Thextar looked at his tactical officer, a 4-armed Zenthari with purple skin covered in battle scars. "How many ships does our sensor array detect?" "Only the one vessel, Admiral," the Zenthari replied. "No other contacts within range." Thextar's form shifted to a bright orange of amusement. A single ship challenging his entire fleet was either madness or stupidity. Either way, it would provide good target practice for his gunners. "All ships battle formation," he ordered. "Prepare to fire on my command." Let us show these impossible humans what happens when someone challenges the might of the Confederation. The 300 ships of the Fourth Fleet moved into attack position, their weapons charging and shields raising. It was an impressive display of military power, enough to conquer entire star systems. That was when Admiral Santos made her next transmission, and Thextar realized that his fleet had made a terrible mistake. You chose poorly, the human voice said simply. Space around the Confederation fleet suddenly filled with light as 1,000 ships decloaked simultaneously. They appeared from nowhere, as if they had been hiding in empty vacuum itself. Each vessel displayed technology that made no sense according to known physics. Their hulls were made of materials that did not appear in any Confederation database. Their energy signatures showed power outputs that should have been impossible. Thextar's energy form flickered between colors so rapidly that his crew could not read his emotions. Fear, disbelief, anger, and desperate calculation all flashed through him at the same time. "All ships, evasive action," he screamed. "Emergency jump to hyperspace!" But it was already too late. The human ships moved with a speed and precision that defied everything the Confederation knew about space combat. They did not fire the massive energy beams or missile salvos that normal fleets used. Instead, they released clouds of something that looked like silver dust. The silver clouds reached the Confederation ships and passed right through their shields, as if the protective barriers did not exist. Within seconds, every system on every Confederation vessel began to shut down. Weapons went offline. Engines stopped working. Life support systems switched to emergency power, but the crews remained unharmed. The lights stayed on. The air kept circulating. It was as if the human weapons had been designed to disable rather than destroy. "Impossible," Thextar whispered, his energy form now a pale white of absolute terror. "No weapon can pass through our shields like that. Our defensive systems are based on the most advanced technology in the galaxy." Admiral Santos's voice came through the communication system again, now with a hint of satisfaction. "Your technology is advanced by Confederation standards," she said. "But the Confederation's understanding of physics has been limited by your own fears and prejudices. You banned certain lines of research because you thought they were too dangerous. We had no such restrictions." On the main screen, images appeared showing the human ships in detail. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time, with flowing lines that seemed to shift and change as they moved. Their hulls appeared to be made of living metal that rippled like water. Energy flowed across their surfaces in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "How?" Thextar managed to ask. "We learned from species you declared extinct," Admiral Santos replied. "We found their wrecks in the forgotten sectors and discovered that they were not extinct at all. They had been exiled just like us. Their crime was becoming too advanced, too independent. You sent them away to die, but their technology lived on." The truth hit Thextar like a physical blow. The forgotten sectors were not a graveyard of failed civilizations. They were a prison where the Confederation had sent anyone who threatened their control. And somehow, impossibly, the humans had not only survived but thrived. "We spent 100 years learning from 8 different extinct species," Admiral Santos continued. "We combined their technologies in ways they never imagined. We pushed the boundaries of science beyond what any single species could achieve alone." Around the disabled Confederation fleet, the human ships began to move in perfect formation. They were not preparing to attack. They were demonstrating their complete control of the battlefield. "Your crews will not be harmed," Admiral Santos said, "but your ships will remain disabled until you agree to our terms. The Terran Empire hereby claims sovereignty over all territory beyond the Rim. We demand immediate cessation of all aggressive actions against developing species. We demand the release of all political prisoners being held in Confederation detention centers." Thextar's energy form flickered weakly. The Confederation Council will never agree to these demands. Then the Confederation Council will learn what it means to fight an enemy they created through their own injustice," Admiral Santos replied. "You had 100 years to become better than you were. Instead, you became everything you once accused us of being." As if to emphasize her point, the human ships began broadcasting on all frequencies throughout the galaxy. The message was simple, but it sent shockwaves through every Confederation world. "This is the Terran Empire announcing our return to galactic civilization. We are no longer the species you exiled a century ago. We have become something new, something stronger." We offer protection to all oppressed peoples and freedom to all who seek it. The age of Confederation tyranny is over. The broadcast included images of human ships, human technology, and human colonies that had grown beyond anything the Confederation had imagined possible. It showed cities built inside asteroids, farms growing on airless moons, and factories that could build starships from raw materials found in empty space. Most shocking of all, it showed other species working alongside humans. Aliens that the Confederation records listed as extinct were alive and thriving in the forgotten sectors. They had joined with humanity to build something that had never existed before. A truly multi-species civilization based on cooperation rather than domination. You exiled us because you feared what we might become, Admiral Santos said to Thextar's disabled fleet. Your fear was justified. We have become your replacement. The engagement lasted exactly 47 minutes from first contact to complete Confederation defeat. When it was over, 300 of the galaxy's most advanced warships hung helpless in space, their crews unharmed but their vessels completely under human control. Admiral Santos made one final transmission before her fleet disappeared back into the darkness between stars. You have 72 hours to acknowledge our territorial claims and begin negotiations for a new galactic order. If you choose to fight instead, remember this moment. Remember how easily your greatest fleet was defeated by beings you thought were extinct. We are no longer the humans you exiled. We are what you made us become. The human ships vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving the disabled Confederation fleet drifting in empty space. It would take rescue ships 3 days to reach them and restore their systems. By then, the news of humanity's return had spread across the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, oppressed species looked up at the stars with something they had not felt in Dekamush. Much were. The Grand Assembly Hall had never seen security like this before. Every entrance was guarded by triple the normal number of troops. Energy shields protected the speaker's platform. Scanning devices checked every being who entered for weapons, recording devices, or anything else that might pose a threat. Despite all these precautions, when the emergency session of the Galactic Confederation Council began, the 3 ruling species discovered that human delegates were already sitting calmly in the front row. No one had seen them enter. No one had detected them on the scanners. They had simply appeared in the most secure facility in the galaxy, as if they had always been there. The lead human delegate was an elderly woman with silver hair and bright green eyes that seemed to burn with inner fire. She wore simple dark clothing and carried no visible weapons, but every being in the hall could sense that she was the most dangerous person in the room. Supreme Chancellor Vexithera, an ancient shepherd of Andromeda, whose true form was hidden beneath robes made of living starlight, called the session to order with a voice that shook the entire building. This emergency session will address the illegal actions of the terrorist organization calling itself the Terran Empire, the Chancellor announced. Their attack on the Fourth Fleet was an act of unprovoked aggression that cannot be tolerated. The human woman stood up slowly. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the massive hall without any electronic amplification. My name is Elena Vasquez, she said. Some of you may remember me. I was the ambassador who stood here 100 years ago, when you condemned my entire species to exile and death. A ripple of shock went through the assembled delegates. Elena Vasquez should have been dead for decades. No human could live that long even with the best medical technology. I have returned to inform you that your sentence has been carried out, Elena continued. The humans you exiled are indeed dead. We are what grew from their ashes. Behind her, 17 other beings stood up. Each one represented a different species, but none of them appeared in current Confederation records. They were the delegates of civilizations that official history claimed had died out long ago. Allow me to introduce my colleagues, Elena said with a smile that made several delegates shiver with fear. Representatives of the Zerathi, the Valdorians, the Kethmar, and 14 other species that you declared extinct after exiling them to the forgotten sectors. Supreme Chancellor Vexithera's robes flickered with patterns of confusion and anger. Impossible. Those species died out naturally. Disease, war, environmental collapse, You are correct about one thing, Elena replied. The original versions of those species did die out. But like humanity, they left behind something new, something that learned from their deaths and grew stronger because of them. She gestured to the other delegates. What you see before you are the survivors. the children and grandchildren of exiles who refused to quietly disappear. We found each other in the darkness between stars and built something that has never existed before, a true alliance of equals. One of the other delegates stepped forward. It was tall and thin, with skin that shifted between different colors as it moved. I am Speaker Zethkara of the New Zerathi Collective. My people were exiled 60 years ago for developing technology that challenged Confederation control. You expected us to die quietly in the void. Instead, we learned to thrive there. Another delegate joined them, this one with 4 arms and crystalline growths along its skull. I am Warlord Thexmani of the Kethmar Unity. You exiled us for refusing to surrender our military traditions. We used those traditions to protect ourselves and others in the lawless regions beyond your authority. Elena nodded approvingly. Each of our species was condemned for the same basic crime. We refused to accept limitations on what we could become. You feared our potential and tried to eliminate us before we could challenge your control. Supreme Chancellor Vexithara's robes now showed deep red patterns of rage. You are criminals and terrorists. Your attack on our fleet proves that our original judgment was correct. What attack? Elena asked innocently. Your fleet suffered some technical difficulties, but no one was killed. No ships were destroyed. Compare that to what your forces typically do to colonies that resist your authority. She waved her hand, and holographic images filled the air above the assembly. They showed Confederation punishment fleets bombarding defenseless worlds. They showed slave labor camps where beings worked until they died of exhaustion. They showed the relocation centers where entire species had been sent to slowly starve. These images are classified, the Chancellor said, his voice rising with panic. How did you obtain them? We have been watching you for decades, Elena replied calmly, learning how the galaxy has changed since our exile. What we discovered is that you have become everything you once accused us of being. More images appeared, showing the corruption and oppression that had spread throughout Confederation space. Tax collectors who demanded impossible payments, governors who lived in luxury while their subjects suffered, military commanders who destroyed entire colonies for the crime of asking for better treatment. You claimed moral authority when you exiled us, Elena continued. You said we were too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous to civilized society. But look what you have built in our absence. A galaxy where might makes right, where the strong oppress the weak, where different ways of thinking are punished with death or exile. She turned to address the thousands of delegates filling the hall. How many of you have watched your people suffer under Confederation rule but were too afraid to speak up? How many of you have seen injustice and done nothing because you feared ending up like the humans? Murmurs began to spread through the assembly. For the first time in decades, delegates from smaller species began to look at each other with something approaching hope. The Terran Empire offers an alternative, Elena announced. Not rule by the strong over the weak, but cooperation between equals. Not punishment for being different, but celebration of diversity. Not limits on what species can become, but encouragement to reach their full potential. Supreme Chancellor Vexithara rose from his throne, his robes now blazing with patterns of absolute fury. Enough, you are criminals and outcasts. Guards, arrest these terrorists immediately. But nothing happened. The Confederation guards remained motionless at their posts, staring straight ahead as if they could not see or hear what was happening. Elena smiled. Your security systems are quite impressive, but they have one weakness. They assume that threats will come from the outside. They never considered what might happen if someone could control them from within. She touched a small device on her wrist, and suddenly every screen in the assembly hall came alive with images of human technology in action. Ships that move faster than light without using hyperspace. Weapons that could disable entire fleets without killing anyone. Cities built in the hearts of stars. Worlds terraformed in a matter of days rather than centuries. This is what we learned in the Forgotten Sectors, Elena said. This is what becomes possible when you stop limiting yourselves out of fear. We combined the knowledge of 18 different extinct civilizations and pushed beyond what any single species could achieve. The images changed to show something even more impressive. Different species working together as true equals. Humans and aliens sharing knowledge freely, building wonders that neither could have created alone, exploring regions of space that the Confederation had declared impossible to reach. We are not here to conquer you, Elena continued. We are here to offer you a choice. Join us in building something better than what exists now. or continue to serve a system that fears progress and punishes innovation? Across the hall, delegates began to stand up. First one, then 10, then hundreds. They were representatives of the smaller species that had suffered most under Confederation rule. The Altarian Republic formally recognizes the Terran Empire, called out a blue-skinned humanoid from the middle section. We request immediate protection from Confederation retaliation. The Deneb Collective joins the Terran Empire, announced another delegate, this one with tentacles instead of arms. We formally renounce our Confederation citizenship. More voices joined the chorus. Species that had been oppressed for decades or centuries finally saw a chance to be free. The careful order of the Confederation began to collapse as world after world declared independence. Supreme Chancellor Vexithara watched his empire crumble in real time, but he was not ready to surrender. The Grand Fleet will crush this rebellion, he declared. We have 10,000 ships. No matter what technology you possess, you cannot stand against the combined might of the Confederation. Elena's expression grew sad rather than angry. You still do not understand. We are not rebels fighting against your system. We are the future replacing your past. She touched her wrist device again, and the images on the screens changed one final time. They now showed Confederation fleets across the galaxy. Hundreds of thousands of ships representing the greatest military force in galactic history. Every single one of them was sitting dead in space, their crews unharmed but their ships completely disabled. Your Grand Fleet no longer exists, Elena said simply. Your military bases are under our control.